So scene 7 set a while after the events of scene 6. And it's quite a short scene, but one I think that acts as a little bit of a transition from scene 6 that I think is the key turning point of the play, where we're forced to sympathise with Blanche a little bit more, to seeing perhaps Stanley's cruelty more than we have previously, and towards seeing Blanche as this victim figure rather than maybe the more ridiculous caricature of someone from the south. So what's going on is that Blanche is in the bath and Stella and Stanley are talking and setting up a birthday meal for Blanche. And we get straight away Stanley, questioning why is Blanche in the bath. She's soaking in a hot tub on one of the hottest days of the year. Temperature's 100 on the nose, Stanley says. Again, it's Stanley's very literal way of seeing things versus Blanche's more metaphorical way. We know that the bath is about cleansing herself, purifying herself. It goes along with the water imagery that we've seen throughout the play, but of course Stanley takes the literal interpretation. Again, Williams is setting up the literal versus the sort of more theatrical way of seeing the world. After scene 6, I think he's forcing the audience to side a little bit more with the theatrical side. A few lines before the bottom of page 69, Stanley says, "Set down, I've got the dope on your big sister Stella." So very colloquial language there. Again, set Stanley up as part of the everyday world of New Orleans, but really emphasises this idea that Stanley's overjoyed with what he sees to be the truth, and it's this very literal, very not particularly attractive truth as well. Stella says, very top of page 70, "Blanche and I grew up under very different circumstances than you did." Of course, it's a statement about class, but I think it's much more than that. It's what I've said throughout. It's two different ways of seeing the world. And Stella, kind of in the last third of the play, seems to side more and more with Stanley's way of seeing the world as Blanche diverts more than she has done before. This is set out in this scene because we've got Blanche off stage singing the Paper Moon song, while Stanley is revealing this kind of very, very harsh truth. Williams commenting the stage directions on page 70. So this popular ballad is saccharine, and it's used contrapuntally, I don't know how to pronounce that, with Stanley's speech. So we've got this irony used by Williams of kind of what Blanche is singing versus the reality of what Stanley's saying. Stanley really takes great pleasure in explaining this going on. We get him comparing Blanche to the President of the United States. That's how well known she is in Laurel. While he's saying that, Blanche is singing in the background, "Say it's only a paper moon sailing over a cardboard sea, but it wouldn't be make-believe if you believed in me." It is a saccharine popular ballad, but it's a ballad about theatricality and about actually the reality might be cheap, but the belief is all important in the theatre. The moon might be made of paper, but that doesn't matter. It's all about the belief and suspending your own disbelief. Again, this is a point about the way that Blanche sees the world. Blanche isn't a liar. Blanche is someone who sees things in a much more theatrical way, and I think Williams is encouraging us to see that increasingly as the play goes on. Compare that towards the bottom of page 71. Stanley says, "And as time went by, she became a town character regarded as not just different but downright loco nuts." So again, Stanley using this quite colloquial language to discuss it, very much alloying him with the reality of New Orleans and the language of New Orleans, totally at odds with Blanche off stage, seeing the world very, very differently. We get that thrown into really clear relief on page 72. About a third of the way down, Stanley says they kicked her out of that high school before the spring term ended, and I hate to tell you the reason that step was taken. A 17-year-old boy she'd got him mixed up with. Okay, this big reveal basically that Blanche was involved with a 17-year-old student. But notice the stage direction pretty much immediately after that from Blanche. In the bathroom, the water goes on loud, little breathless cries and peals of laughter are heard, as if a child were frolicking in the tub. So Williams, as Stanley is saying that, is giving us a very clear indication through the stage direction that Blanche sees herself as a child. Blanche herself is very childlike, and it forces us to see her less as a predator and more as someone basically who is trapped in this childlike state. And this I think is explored a little bit more as the scene goes on. So Blanche says to Stanley, "Possess your soul in patience," a third of the way down page 73. Stanley saying, "It's not my soul I'm worried about." So this, I guess this implication of religion and Blanche's soul being in trouble. But if we see this whole play as a bit of a purgatory for Blanche, I don't think it's as simple as you know, us judging Blanche for her behaviour. I think Williams is forcing us to not do that at all, and actually see Blanche as, if anything, a much more angelic figure at the end of the play. You know, she's been in the bath, she's seen in a weird sort of way as being very, very pure. Stella starts to explain to Stanley, and about 2/3 of the way down page 73, she talks about Alan Gray. She says he was extremely good looking. I think Blanche didn't just love him, but worshipped the ground he walked on, adored him, and thought him almost too fine to be human. So we see that sort of lying, that way of seeing the world, isn't just what Blanche presents to the world, it's what she herself has seen in Alan Gray. She saw what she wanted to see, she saw something that was better than reality, and of course it wasn't real. You know, he was gay, he couldn't give her what she wanted in terms of the full romantic relationship that she'd be wanting from the kind of the gentleman of the Southern Gothic. But that's exactly what Blanche has done ever since. So I think Williams is at pains to show that really, that Blanche sees and expresses, you know, sees the world and expresses herself in that way, in the way that the world should be, rather than the way that it is, as she says it on the end. Halfway down page 74, Stanley basically says he's going to tell Mitch. He says, I'd have that on my conscience the rest of my life if I knew all the stuff and let my best friend get caught. So again, Stanley twice over the course of 2 pages has brought in sort of conventional morality really, and he's not really done that before in the play. So I think Williams is doing that to make a really ironic point here, that Stanley sort of grasps at this morality quite conveniently. But it's not real. Of course, this is all about Stanley taking pleasure, and Williams again is forcing this audience at still quite a traditionally religious time to abandon perhaps the conventional way of seeing the world, and abandon the things that Stanley is talking about here, and see sin and purity in slightly different ways, and see Blanche as this figure in purity who does ascend at the end through theatricality and through imagination, rather than through kind of conventional religious good. Stanley says about 1/3 of the way down page 75, her future is mapped out for her, and I think that line's really important and really useful for all sort of ways. We could see this idea of an inevitable ending, which Blanche hints at as well, this sense that Stanley's definitely gonna rape her, you know, that this has been foreshadowed all along. You could also talk about the inevitability of Blanche's madness, and you know, her representing the Old South that just inevitably will decline. Another way of seeing it perhaps is a more positive way, that her future is mapped out for her, because we are watching this on stage, we are watching this theatrical piece of drama, and so therefore through that perhaps Williams has mapped out this future that allows Blanche to kind of gain the audience's sympathy, and by doing that sort of ascend to this metaphorical heaven. That's another way of looking at it. And coming straight after scene 6, where Williams has forced us to side with Blanche more, that might be a way that you could go with the analysis. It's about looking at the nuance here and trying to again go beyond just the simplistic point about, you know, Stanley and the meat, Stella and the staircase. And it ends with Stella lying to Blanche. I mean, I guess it is for her own good in some ways, but it sets up the pattern that happens later on. Nothing has happened, Blanche. Blanche saying, you're lying, something has. It sort of sounds a little bit like the ending, doesn't it, with Stella sort of comforting Blanche, but equally not believing her and not telling her the truth. Again, it's that sense perhaps of Stella starting to side more with Stanley over Blanche. It ends with Blanche staring fearfully at Stella, who pretends to be busy at the table. So again, notice that image of domesticity with Stella. Of course, it's an artifice, it's to stop Blanche falling suspicious, but again it kind of is what happens at the end, isn't it? Stella choosing this quite monotonous domestic life over believing her sister. The distant piano goes into a hectic breakdown, and by now we know that the music, we know that the sound effects, a lot of them are in Blanche's head because of scene 6. We know that this is representing Blanche's mindset, and so again through theatre, Williams is forcing us to be in Blanche's head and see and hear that breakdown as she sees and hears it. So again, actually, we have to side with Blanche here. Scene 7's all about giving us two very conflicting ways of seeing the world, and I think Williams wants us actually to side very, very much with Blanche here.